Section 50 to transfer of property pending suit relating thereto. During the pendency in any court having authority within the limits of India or established beyond such limits by the central government excluding the state of Jammu and Kashmir of any suit or proceeding which is not collusive and in which any right to immovable property is directly and specifically in question, the property cannot be transferred or otherwise dealt with by any party to the suit or proceeding so as to affect the rights of any other party thereto under any decree or order which may be made therein, except under the authority of the court and on such terms as it may impose. Explanation. For the purposes of this section, the pendency of a suit or proceeding shall be deemed to commence from the date of the presentation of the plaint or the institution of the proceeding in a court of competent jurisdiction, and to continue until the suit or proceeding has been disposed of by a final decree or order and complete satisfaction or discharge of such decree or order has been obtained, or has become unobtainable by reason of the expiration of any period of limitation prescribed for the execution thereof by any law for the time being in force. Note: after revoking the provision of Article 370 in the Constitution of India, it's applicable in Jammu and Kashmir. Here's a breakdown of Section 52 of the Transfer of Property Act, along with explanations and key takeaways. Restriction on transfer of property during pending suit. When it applies, this section comes into play when a legal dispute, suit or proceeding concerning a right to immovable property is ongoing in a court. Key restriction: during this period, the property generally cannot be transferred or dealt with by any party involved in the dispute in a way that would affect the rights of other parties in the suit. Purpose: to prevent potential injustice or complications that could arise from property transfers while a legal battle over its ownership or rights is still in progress. Key points: applicability: applies to courts within India or those established by the central government outside India. Genuine disputes: only applies to non-collusive suits, genuine disputes, not those staged to circumvent the law. Direct and specific disputes: the dispute must directly and specifically concern a right to immovable property. Court's authority: the court can permit a transfer or dealing with the property under specific terms and conditions. Definition of pendency. Beginning: pendency starts from the date a plaint, formal statement of a legal claim, is filed or the proceeding is initiated in a competent court. Ending: continues until a final decree or order is issued and complete satisfaction or discharge of that decree or order is obtained, or it becomes impossible to execute the decree or order due to expiry of limitation period as per law. Key takeaways. Restriction on transfers. Section 52 restricts property transfers during legal disputes to protect the rights of all parties involved. Court's discretion. The court has the authority to allow transfers under certain conditions. Clear definition of pendency. The section clarifies when the restriction applies and when it ends. Additional considerations. Collusive suits. Collusive suits are not covered by Section 52 as they are not genuine disputes. Other laws. This section may interact with other laws, such as the Code of Civil Procedure in specific cases. Legal advice. It's crucial to seek legal advice for specific situations to understand how this section applies and its implications. Section 53 Fraudulent Transfer. 1. Every transfer of immovable property made with intent to defeat or delay the creditors of the transferor shall be voidable at the option of any creditor so defeated or delayed. Nothing in this subsection shall impair the rights of a transferee in good faith and for consideration. Nothing in this subsection shall affect any law for the time being in force relating to insolvency. A suit instituted by a creditor, which term includes a decree, older whether he has or has not applied for execution of his decree, to avoid a transfer on the ground that it has been made with intent to defeat or delay the creditors of the transferor, shall be instituted on behalf of, or for the benefit of, all the creditors. 2. Every transfer of immovable property made without consideration with intent to defraud a subsequent transferee shall be voidable at the option of such transferee. For the purposes of this subsection, no transfer made without consideration shall be deemed to have been made with intent to defraud by reason only that a subsequent transfer for consideration was made. Here's an elaboration of Section 53 of the Transfer of Property Act, addressing fraudulent transfers of immovable property. Key points: voidable transfers. Section 53 identifies two types of fraudulent transfers that can be voided, cancelled, under certain conditions. 1. Transfers to defraud creditors. Subsection 1. Intent to delay or defeat creditors. If a transfer of immovable property is made with the intention of preventing or hindering creditors from recovering their debts, it can be voided at the option of an affected creditor. Exception for bona fide transferees. A transferee who acquired the property in good faith and for consideration, meaning they paid a fair price without knowledge of the fraudulent intent, is protected and can keep the property. Insolvency laws unaffected. This subsection doesn't override any existing laws related to insolvency. Suit for all creditors. A creditor initiating a suit to void a fraudulent transfer must do so on behalf of all creditors, not just themselves. 2. Transfers without consideration to defraud subsequent transferees. Subsection 2. Transfer without payment. If a transfer of immovable property is made without any payment or exchange of value, consideration, and with the intent to defraud a future buyer, it can be voided at the option of that subsequent transferee. Not based on subsequent sale alone, a transfer without consideration isn't automatically deemed fraudulent just because a subsequent transfer for consideration occurs. Other evidence of fraudulent intent is required. Essential considerations. Burden of proof. The burden of proving fraudulent intent lies with the party seeking to void the transfer, whether it's a creditor or a subsequent transferee. Limitation period. There are time limits for initiating suits to void fraudulent transfers, so it's crucial to act promptly. Legal advice. Due to the complexities of property law and the need to establish intent, it's strongly recommended to seek legal counsel if you suspect a fraudulent transfer. Section 53. Apart performance. Where any person contracts to transfer for consideration any immovable property by writing signed by him or on his behalf from which the terms necessary to constitute the transfer can be ascertained with reasonable certainty, and the transferee has, in part performance of the contract, taken possession of the property or any part thereof, or the transferee, being already in possession, continues in possession in part performance of the contract and has done some act in furtherance of the contract, and the transferee has performed or is willing to perform his part of the contract. Then, notwithstanding that, or where there is an instrument of transfer, that the transfer has not been completed in the manner prescribed therefore by the law for the time being in force, the transferor or any person claiming under him shall be debarred from enforcing against the transferee and persons claiming under him any right in respect of the property of which the transferee has taken or continued in possession, other than right expressly provided by the terms of the contract, provided that nothing in this section shall affect the rights of a transferee for consideration who has no notice of the contract or of the part performance thereof. Here's a breakdown of Section 53 of the Transfer of Property Act, which deals with the concept of part performance in contracts for immovable property. Key points: protecting transferees who act in good faith. This section aims to protect transferees, buyers, who have taken certain actions in reliance on a contract, even if the transfer hasn't been formally completed according to legal requirements. Conditions for part performance. Written contract. There must be a written contract signed by or on behalf of the transferor, seller, clearly outlining the terms of the transfer. Possession. The transferee must have either taken possession of the property or part of it in furtherance of the contract, or already been in possession and continued to remain in possession in part performance of the contract. Acts in furtherance. The transferee must have done some act to further the contract, demonstrating their commitment to fulfilling their obligations. Willingness to perform. The transferee must have either performed their part of the contract or be willing to do so. Effect of part performance. Restriction on transferor's rights. If these conditions are met, the transferor is barred from enforcing any rights against the transferee regarding the property, except those explicitly stated in the contract. This means the transferor cannot try to reclaim the property or change the terms of the agreement. Exceptions. Transferee for consideration without notice. The protection of part performance doesn't apply to a subsequent transferee who acquires the property for consideration, payment, without any knowledge of the original contract or the part performance. Essential implications. Equitable doctrine. Part performance is an equitable doctrine, meaning it applies based on principles of fairness and justice, even if strict legal formalities haven't been met. Protection for transferees. It prevents transferors from taking advantage of transferees who have acted in good faith and relied on a contract, even if technical requirements are lacking. Enforceability of contracts. It helps ensure that contracts for immovable property are upheld even when there might be minor procedural shortcomings. Important reminder: complex legal area, property law can be intricate, and navigating specific cases often requires professional legal guidance. If you are involved in a situation involving part performance or property disputes, it's always advisable to consult a qualified lawyer for expert advice and representation.